What's up, y'all? I am here with Kylie Morgan. Starting. I can't even say your last name. That is actually my name.
It's going great.
Okay.
So my last name is your first name.
I'm just gonna try it again.
Already doing great. Killing it.
All right. What's up, everybody? I'm here with Kylie Morgan, who's a super talented artist. She's in the country music world, but she is taking the internet by storm. And she's been around since she was like 12 years old. You may not know that. But Kylie, without further ado, I just want to hear your story and talk to you and let the listeners get to know you on your own right now.
Oh goodness, how much time you have. No, it's a long story, but I'm going to consolidate it. What's up, everybody? I'm Kylie Morgan. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
Podcasts, we were just talking about this, but podcasts are my favorite because you get to actually know the person. You get to know their story, where they came from, their struggles, their wins, their loses, and it just shows that like everyone's on a journey. So that's why I love being able to hear people's stories, because then you can be like, oh, they weren't born on the top? What do you mean?
Yeah, because it looks so glamorous, right? From the outside looking in.
Absolutely, until you're like in a van with 3 stinky dudes driving through the night to get to the next show. Originally from Newcastle, Oklahoma, super small town, and I always joke and say it's like the town that you like stop to get gas in on your way to the OU game, like very small, few stoplights. Grew up there and just kind of always felt like a fish out of water. Always loved the city, always like dreamt of the city. And I was a small town Oklahoma girl. And first time I went to the West Coast, first time I went to Nashville, I was like, I'm made for the city. And so I kind of had a epiphany when I was 12 years old. We've talked about this, but fun fact, Morgan is also a very talented gymnast, and
very talented is not the word.
Hey, I'm tooting your horn because you're not going to do it. But so I was a gymnast as well for 10 years, my whole life. And I will say that is really what taught me like the whole aspect of dedication, because I mean, I'm sure you remember, it's like I went to school, I changed in the car into my leotard, and then I did gymnastics for 3.5 hours a day, 5 days a week, would go home, do homework, and then get up and do it all over again. So it was always like, I was just a kid that was just always on the move, ready to have a mission, ready to do something. Well, once I realized around like 11, I was like, am I going to the Olympics? No.
You hope so, right?
I mean,
that's kind of the plan.
Goal, but I knew I just wasn't good enough to be one of 6 every 4 years, right?
Fair.
So I was like, oh, I really want to play guitar. I love writing songs. I love doing theater. I love singing. So maybe I'll learn to play guitar. So I got my little pink guitar for Christmas from my papaw when I was 12. And truly there was no turning back. I told my mom when I learned my first 3 chords and wrote my first song on guitar, I was like, Mom, I'm skipping college and moving to Nashville to be a country music artist.
You knew very early.
Yeah, my poor mom was just like, oh no, what did I get myself into? And I did it though. I just like was always the kid that said if she was gonna do something, I would figure out a way to do it. And so it kind of always made sense that I felt like a fish out of water, because my mindset and my dream set, I would say, was just so different than anybody that I went to school with. And so I just kind of always felt like I was different from everybody, sometimes good, but most of the time bad. Dealt with like bullying all growing up, and just kind of being in a different mindset makes people think that you think you're better than them, but truth is that's not the case at all. I just think differently and had really big dreams. And so I started going to Nashville to co-write songs when I was 15. I met this guy that pretty much took me under his wing. His name's Russ Zabatson. He's been a song plugger for years here in town, and is still one of my favorite people, and has been just a huge part of my story. I pretty much signed my first indie record deal when I was 14 with this super small like company in Oklahoma that pretty much created their label for me. It was this guy that was just loved music, and his wife actually ended up slipping one of my CDs to his LA music friend and pretty much said, what do you think of her? And there he was like, I think you should fly her out to LA and let me hear her. And so I went out to LA and played a song for him with an out-of-tune guitar. Was still learning guitar, yes. And panicked, couldn't figure out how to tune it, and just played the whole song with an out-of-tune guitar. And I was terrified. And he said, well, I'll say you got it because you just sang on pitch to an out-of-tune guitar the whole song.
You had a lot of drive to get through that, I imagine.
Oh, it was just the worst ever, but truly grew from it, just like we grow from anything that we struggle with. And so started going back and forth to Nashville at 15 and found people that would be willing to write with me. One of them was a guy named Walker Hayes, and he was one of the very first people I ever wrote with when I came to Nashville, which is insane that he would agree to write with a 15-year-old, first of all. And now to see where he is now, it's just so cool to have that piece of my story and our history that we have together. And so I just knew once I walked down Broadway for the first time that Nashville was going to be home. And so I toured full-time, ended up doing sophomore through senior year online so that I could spend full-time touring and just like figuring out who I was as an artist, getting my feet wet, going back and forth to Nashville, writing continuously. And finally at 19, I packed up a bunch of thrift store furniture and moved to Nashville. I saved up all my money from touring and was able to buy a house. And
amazing.
It's super weird to like say, but like I had nothing to pay for, I was living with my parents, so I just saved all my money that I ever made from every show.
Well, then let me brag on you since you bragged on me. That's pretty freaking cool at 19 years old.
Thank you so much. I have been very lucky to have parents that have instilled a very they taught me how to work with money and taught me like how to save money and like how to put it in the right places. So I literally thank God for that, because my first publishing deal, when I moved here and signed my first pub deal, I was making $20K a year, which is impossible to live on, especially in Nashville. But thankfully, since I bought my house, I had a roommate. So like she paid my mortgage and I just had to pay for like my food, And so that was the only way I was able to survive off of that. But that led to another publishing deal, which, with a guy named Shane McAnally. I'm sure that some of you have heard of him.
Another humble brag, as you should be bragging.
Shane is one of the most beautiful people inside and out. He's a hit songwriter here in town, for those of you who don't know him. If you listen to the radio, you've heard his work. I met him when I think I was 20 years old, and it was actually when Walker signed with Smack, and Robin Palmer, who is the reason actually Shane got his first cut ever. I got a call from her, and long story short, I was in the middle of being like, WTF, what am I going to do? I lost my last deal because they lost their investor, and so like I moved to town with a deal, so I never met with any like managers or like publishers or anything like that because I already moved here, so no one knew who I was, and I was terrified. And so I got a call from Robin Palmer, and I'll never forget this voicemail. It was like, "Hi, this is Robin Palmer. I heard your songs through Walker Hayes' catalog, and I was just calling because who are you? And I want to know you, so call me back." And so I immediately called her back, and we got a meeting, and I've just played her some of the stuff that I've been working on, and she was super stoked about it and played it for Shane. Shane came to see me play at the Bluebird Cafe, and I got my publishing deal right after that, and that led to a management deal. And then 3 years of just branding myself, figuring out who I was as an artist, what I wanted to say, that led to Shane bringing me into Universal, introducing me to Mike Dungan, and got my record deal. And then it was like, okay, we're here, right? We've made it.
You arrived.
All right, we did it until, this giant pandemic hit. And then it was like, remember that one time that you thought that you were there? Well, just kidding, you're not. So I did this whole radio tour right before the pandemic was about to go with this single called Break Things. And then, no one was doing anything. Everything froze. And so I pretty much got benched just like everybody else did. And that was 3.5 years ago. And I am so excited and proud to say that after 3.5 years, we finally have an ad date for radio. We're finally doing the big push through Universal, and it's finally happening. So that was a long-winded, long story long, but those are the highlights, and it's still a journey from here.
No, I think it's a great, to show just how far you've come, where you are now, and what happened along the way. But I do want to get into that a little bit. There was something that really stuck out to me when you were talking about that. And you were saying you were a fish out of water for a really long time because of the mindset you had. And I think for a long time, especially you and I are very close in age. And when we grew up, it was hard to be different. If you were different, it wasn't understood yet.
You were weird.
Yeah. Today, being different is like the best thing in the world.
Oh, it's the best. You're unique.
Yes. Thanks to TikTok and all the other crazy things that are out there. But being that fish out of water, what do you feel like kind of during that time frame of your life where you're trying to figure everything out and nothing was really making sense? What was that kind of hardest moment for you that you look back on and you're like, that really kind of changed the course of my life.
Yeah, I'll actually never forget this moment. So when I started writing songs, I started writing it for me. Like, I thought it was just therapy for me. It made me feel better. I would go home and lock myself in my room with me and my guitar, and I would just vent to my guitar and write about what I was going through. Also much cheaper than therapy, which is great. But music was my healer, and I just always knew that, like, at first when I started making music, I thought it was for me. And then I begged my mom for a MySpace music when I was like 13. And back then, like, just like social media had just started, like happening. And my mom thought that I was going to like get kidnapped and killed if I like put anything on the internet. And so I like begged her. And finally for Christmas, she gave me a MySpace music, and she put it in a little card with a password. And it was like Mom's Trust. And she's like, I'm trusting you to get on this. Every time you type it in, you have to think of me. And so I went on, it was right when the MacBooks came out with GarageBand, and I just recorded just me and my guitar, some songs, put them up, and like ended up getting a lot of like plays and traffic from it. Started putting stuff on YouTube, same thing. And that led to, actually, this is the moment that I realized music was not for just me. When I went to Nashville for the first time, that week of first writing songs, I wrote with this beautiful human named Liz Hangber and other beautiful human named Rob Crosby. Liz Hangber has written a bunch of like Reba hits and Brooks and Dunn songs, things like that. Rob Crosby wrote Concrete Angel by Martina McBride. And again, for them to even agree to write with me was just unreal. And we go into the room, we start talking about, what's going on. And she said, Liz was like, I just want to bring this up. When you're in a writing room, you never know what you're going to write about that day until you get in there, see where everyone's head's at, see what everyone's feeling. And Liz was like, I have this thing weighing on my heart. I just want to bring it up. I heard this story of this girl named Phoebe who I recently kind of dove into, and she was 15, and she recently just committed suicide because of bullying and dealing with that, and couldn't take it anymore, took her own life. And I was 15 at the time and had been dealing with bullying. So like it hit home for me really hard to know that it led to that for someone else. And so we just decided to write that story, and we wrote this song called Phoebe in honor of her, and ended up putting it on YouTube. It got like 70,000 views in like 3 days. And I ended up reading all the comments, and it was just like, these kids were being like, this song saved my life. Like, thank you. I was thinking about doing this, and now that I saw the effect it had on other people, like it was one of the moments I was just like, music is not for me at all. My music is, yes, it's for me, but it's also for others. And what gave me the inspiration to be like, okay, no, this is going to happen, because I want to help more people through my music. And that's what helped me all growing up, was I would, lean on artists like Taylor Swift, Shania, all those like original artists that helped me get through things, and I wanted to become that for other people. And so knowing that affected, I didn't want to stop there. So I actually ended up starting my own bullying prevention campaign called It Matters What We Do, which is a line from the song. And I ended up touring from schools all across the country, from pre-K all the way up to university level, and would go and fly in and talk about bullying, and then play and perform and like make it a fun, thing, rather than an adult being like, don't do this. It was like a peer-to-peer thing. And I would just do meet and greets after, and I would just have kids crying in my arms. And it was just like, that point in life was just like, no matter how frustrating the music business gets, I have to remember why I started music, because that is the reason why God gave me this talent.
So it gave you this super like charged passion almost. Not only was it something that was like in your blood, it became something that was like, I have to do this to help others.
Right. It became like less about me and what I wanted and being famous and like all that, and more of like, no, like this is a passion that's going to help other people.
I didn't know that you had a bullying situation. And most of the time as we get older and you meet people later on in life, you don't tend to hear about things that happened in childhood, right? Which is kind of a sad thing to me, because it makes us who we are. Mm-hmm. But I was also someone that was a victim of bullying. It was the first time I ever dealt with depression and suicidal thoughts.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
But I know, like, coming from you as someone who also dealt with that, like, I'm sure you had your own battles to deal with at that same time. And I remember how tough that was. So how are you, like, helping these other kids through something, even though you were freshly going through it too?
I think that's what the magical thing about it was. It's like, hi, I'm talking to you about this, not because I've overcome it and I'm done with it and I'm going to preach at you and how you should deal with it. It's like, I'm continuously dealing with it and I'm figuring it out with you. And it's more of like here's what affected me, and maybe it'll affect you in that way, to where we can like cross paths in a way that is like, it was, like I said, it was more of like a peer-to-peer conversation rather than me just like talking at these kids, because I was, I did it from 15 to 19. And so I was able to connect with them from the age range, as well as just like dealing with that as well at the same time.
Yeah. Do you think too, like as you've gotten older, do you look back on that? I know for me, like I look back on that and I'm not thankful for it. That's not the right word. But I don't hate that it happened, because it changed the course of my life.
I cannot wait for you to hear the song that I'm coming out with on my new EP. So it's called Mean Girls. And the top of the chorus, it says, "Thank God for mean girls to show me how bad words can hurt." And the whole point of the song is like, because all these bad things happened to me, I got the good things that truly made me who I am. And instead of looking back and being like, yeah, thanks for like spreading all those rumors about me and like saying that I'll never get anywhere. And like, no, like I'm not saying that, but I'm saying like, thank you for giving me the strength to overcome the words that you're saying and continuing to find a way to move forward. And that way I know how to deal with it, even in my adult life.
Yeah. And you still do. There's still moments that you look back and you're like, okay, that's triggering to something I dealt with before. Don't want to go there again.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's like, especially now with social media, I mean, you can't help. I am so bad about this. Like I will go on my socials and I will see thousands of so sweet comments, and I like try and like read and respond to all of them. Cause like I remember being that person of like writing someone that I'm, like excited about and a fan of, and then like never acknowledging my existence. And so like I try to respond to as many messages and comments as I can. But like every 1,000 nice comments, there's one like super mean one. And for some reason I'm like, why do I feel the need to go back and respond to this first? Like all these amazing, sweet things people are saying. And I'm like, let me show you, blah, blah. And I'm like, but that's truly like, it's just our nature. It's just like when one bad apple can truly like ruin a whole batch. And so trying to be able to, like I said, continuously learning how to separate the fact of like, honestly, there's always going to be someone that does not agree with you. There was always going to be someone that thinks that what you're doing is not good or whatever. And it's like, as long as you realize that it is truly impossible to please everybody, like that's what shifted my gear of like, okay, instead of asking everyone else's opinion, how do I feel? Like, how do I feel about this? And like, am I proud of this? Like if I'm proud of it and I enjoy it, then that should be the number one thing. And then instead of trying to please everybody, it comes from a place of like wholesomeness and reality, rather than just being like, here's a song that I wrote because everyone wanted me to write it. Okay, hope you like it. Bye. You're like, yes. Okay, let me know how that goes.
And you just shared a little bit too of like your mindset and how you kind of handle those situations. But I did want to talk to you about that too, especially knowing, that you went through something that was really hard in a hard moment in your life. Now, as you continue to blow up, this is only the beginning for you on this part of your career, right?
Thank you.
What advice would you give to people who are, they're maybe an artist, maybe they're not, maybe they're just someone who's in their career and trying to figure it out, and maybe they're trying to figure out the influencing thing, who knows?
Yeah.
But what advice would you give them? Like when you see mean comments and when you see these things come through, what's kind of your process to get through it?
Yeah. So I actually have a story for you, and it was literally like a defining moment for me. And since I like grew up in the music business, it was more just like such a pressure to be perfect. And let's be honest, like some people, you can give me lash on this, but like, especially the male and female aspect in country music, you can have a mullet, a beard, and not care about anything, and you're killing it.
Yeah.
But like, if you're not Carrie Underwood as a female, then it's just like, well, no, she's not a star. It's just like, so it's more of like, it's such a pressure to be perfect. And I always felt that. And I also like had some very toxic people I worked with in my younger age that kind of like, I wouldn't say got in my head, and it like kind of forced me to think in a way where I'm like, no, I have to be on and perfect all the time, or else I'm going to mess it up and I'll miss the opportunity. And so it was actually later on in life that this epiphany happened, and I was in media training. It was right after I signed my deal with Universal. And it was the first time I ever did media training. I'd done interviews a lot, but it's like just good to like realize, you know, where your story comes from, what you want to say and how you want to say it, and not be misconstrued. And honestly, it was exhausting to be like, oh my God, like thinking about it over and over and like, how do I answer this question? Anyway, so I'm doing media training and I get flustered on an answer, and I just start being like, oh my, I'm so sorry. Can I start over? And she's like, first of all, take a breath, and it's okay. And you can, if you're nervous, you can say that in an interview. You can say, sorry, I'm really nervous. Like, it's just like overwhelming. And I'm like, wait, what? You can say that? You what? And she's like, yeah, like it shows you're human. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I thought that was such a bad thing to like feel nervous or be overwhelmed or like stumble on your words. Like, it was like over. She's like, no, you can literally say, sorry, I'm really nervous right now. Can I try that again? And it shows that you're not perfect and you're a human being. Because let's be honest, no one relates to perfection. We relate to the things that make us imperfect. And so that was like the defining moment for me, is because I was like, oh, I don't have to be perfect. Okay. And then that's when like I even started like writing songs about like my imperfections and like highlighting those, rather than being like, oh, let me get a perfect face, perfect hair, you know, the perfect ring light. Like, and then when TikTok came out, all of my viral videos are when I like get out of bed in the morning. I literally like go downstairs in my hoodie and I'm like, what? Like, the ones that I try on, they never do anything. And so I just think it's such a cool time in a way that it highlights imperfection in the best way, that you don't have to be perfectly put together to put your life out there. And so I think it's like, that was a defining moment for me, is like realizing that being imperfect is actually what made people relate to me more.
Yes. And I think too, like, you know, to kind of tie a bow on all of that conversation about being able to handle things online in the story that you just told, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's, you know, you have to accept who you are and love who you are and just own it and continue to rock it despite what anybody wants to say. If it's the one mean person, if it's multiples, like if you are happy with it, then keep doing it.
Truly. And like, I mean, I have this song called Break Things, and it's truly like the opening line is like, if it's a 65-mile-an-hour drive, I'll be doing 90. Like, I'm like always, I like in the whole song, I'm like, hey, just be careful. Like, I break things. I like mess up a lot. I'm like, just so you know, here's the warning sign. And it's like, that's also though the thing that connected me to so many people, because people were like, heck yeah, that's me too. Like, I feel that way. And it's like, really? Same. So it's just like, it's like you relate to people on all these different levels by like highlighting the things that don't make you perfect, rather than being like, hi, I'm Kylie. I'm perfect all the time, and this is what I look like all the time. Like, no, that's not the case. That's not how you, and I even highlight that with my relationship, because like I've had a lot of songs that have been doing well online about my relationship, and I'll post videos or be like, hey, guess what? I'm mad at Jay today. Like, we're in a fight and we need space. Like, and that's okay, because no relationship is perfect and no person is perfect. And that's what we should be seeing, rather than being like the girl that posted the selfie that she took 5,000 times and put 7,000 filters on and then face-tuned her own face. It's like, no, that's not real. And so I just hope that like when people follow me and people continuously to choose the accounts they follow more people like that, to like make it a reality, instead of waking up and looking in the mirror and being like, wait, I don't look like that.
It's a very unrealistic expectation for all of us, not even just the people that are seeing it, but the people that are doing it too. We constantly keep holding up the same narrative. Like, let's break that down and keep changing it, because especially as a social media director, I see that happening. That change is already here, whether people are in board or, you know, or not. So I think it's really cool. I think the message that you were constantly sending, not only just being an artist, but as a person. Thank you. Which is why it was so exciting to have you on, because we get to talk on this like very human side that's so much different. You know, you do have a song that went viral. It's still going viral, independent with you. Yes. And, you know, earlier on this podcast, I was talking to Dr. Solomon, who's an expert in basically all things, but definitely in relationships a little bit. Oh my God,
I need to listen to that part of the podcast for sure. I can always use tips and tricks on that.
No, but like, and she's so awesome. And she talked about, you know, how to have these really refreshing, honest conversations with the people in your life. But what's important about it is that you make sure that they're open to having that conversation, like that space is there and that they're ready to have that conversation. What kind of healthy things have you and Jay found that work for you guys?
Yeah, well, I'll be honest. Like, so I met him when I was 19, little baby Kylie. And I was the girl who was married to her career. I mean, that's all I thought about. That's all I eat, breathe, sleep music. So it's like, I've had a goal since I was little. And ever since before I met Jay, every relationship I was in, I was forced to choose between the relationship or my music. Like if music was thriving, then my relationship was in the tank. If my relationship was thriving, then music was sucking. Like, it just was never a balance. And so truly, when I was 19 and I saw him walking down the stairs of this publishing company on Music Row, I was like, that's my husband. Like, I knew it, and I was just terrified to know it, but also like wasn't willing to admit that I ever wanted to get married, because I always thought that I would still continuously have to choose. And I just was always like, oh, I'm the girl that'll never get married, and that's fine. Like, I'll be in a happy relationship. We'll be together, but like, we don't got to put any label on it, or like the word wife still terrifies me. Like, it kind of grosses me out sometimes. I just feel like I also haven't always had like the best examples of marriage in different parts of my life. And so it just like, the idea of it just scared me. I just like always thought that one was above another, and like that's how it was. And after being with Jay, he for the first time showed me that I could have both, because he treats me like an equal. And I mean, even to the point where literally he just posted today. So his name is Jay Allen, but Allen is actually was his middle name. And I was like, well, if I'm going to take your last name, like, I want it to be the name that people know you as, not like, like no one even knows your last name. I was like, so you should legally change your like name to Allen, because that's what you want anyway. And he was like, yeah, but like I won't have a middle name. And I was like, how about I take your name if you take my name?
So what happened?
He just posted his ID, and he is officially J. Morgan Allen.
Oh
officially.
My gosh. Yeah. Talk about like the coolest like turn of events.
Like, that is just how great he is. Like, name another man that will take a female's name. Like, I was like, I'll have your name if you have my name. And he was like, okay. And I was like, wait, really? I mean, I was like shocked. I didn't think he was going to agree to it. And so for me and us, it is continuously like learning about each other in a way that like, when your taste buds change every 7 years. Like, how are you not going to change every 7 years? And continuously growing together. And I mean, we had a mishap in our relationship where like we were like make or break, and we decided to go to therapy, which like helped us tremendously. And usually people are like, especially in the South, they're like, oh, therapy? Like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, oh my God, please change your mindset, because therapy is the best thing in the entire world. Like, it just makes you think so differently, and it makes you learn things about yourself that you didn't even know. So we started doing therapy, and we just applied those things that we learned there in everyday life. And we don't go anymore, but we truly like learn so much from it. And I think the biggest thing that we learned is continuously realizing that we're both going to evolve, and we're both going to change, and we can either do that together or we can do that separately. And that's how it always ends in divorce, usually, when that happens. And so if we can agree to like continuously grow together and evolve together in different ways that each other is needing, whatever stage of life that's in, then that's when we continuously be closer and like continuously not feel like it's work.